All right. So jumping in a little late here. There are some like also some classic things that people think of when they think of good boundaries. I think we assume if we have good boundaries, work is going to be easy and light. We're going to have more time to hang out with our friends, have more time to go on vacation. And these are all good things, but there's a little bit more behind that, which we'll get to. Now, a talk about boundaries wouldn't be complete without a definition. So I want to pause for a second just on this definition so we're all on the same page. Boundaries are the places where you end and the world begins. I think it can be really easy to get caught up in like identities, like maybe your identity as an entrepreneur can feel like it's like consuming a lot of you, but you are separate from that identity as an entrepreneur. And it's actually that definition that sort of forms the boundary. Like entrepreneurship is the way that you interact with the world. And it brings up the question, like, who are you anyways? This is a topic that philosophers have been debating for centuries, and we don't need to spend all of our time here today for that. We can simplify this as just a collection of things. So you have like your mind and your body, your time and your energy, values, possessions, network. And out of all of these things together kind of emerges this sense of self. And when we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about conserving these things. With respect to work, it is mostly our time and our energy that we are giving to work. There are times, depending on your job, like you might be doing more physical things. If you're in sales, you're probably leveraging more of your social network. But it's this giving of time and energy for work where it really boundaries are important. Because like we all need to work to live, right? We need money to a certain extent. So we need to let work come into there, but we can't let it totally come in. And we got to find that fine line. Boundary talks wouldn't be complete without understanding what boundary violations are, because this is sort of the lens through which we navigate. And just as hypothetically, not that I'm going to do this, but if you can imagine what it would feel like if you were on a Zoom call and like someone asked you kind of unprompted to like turn on your camera, like I need you to respond to this. Sort of like called at random. There's that feeling you get of like, no, like my camera's off, like leave me alone. That's an important feeling to notice, because boundary violations are like visceral reactions. You get that like cringe feeling. And there's never going to be a hard and fast rule for what your boundaries are, because you can change over time. It's different per person. But like understanding that emotional reaction is the tool that you use to navigate these spaces. When you feel that like cringe, it's like, oh, someone like I didn't know I had a boundary there. Maybe I need to like stop and think like, what was the boundary, and how can I enforce it? And then just like more vocabulary here. Porous boundaries. That's when your like barriers are too low. So you got too many harmful things coming in. Too much of yourself is going out. Sort of like in Monsters Inc. You feel like the monsters are coming in, they're scaring you. All your energy is being drained. And when your boundaries are too porous, that leads to burnout. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. We all know what burnout looks like. It's like you're rolling out of bed into meetings. You're like scrolling on your phone. You don't know why. It feels like things at your job are on fire all of the time. You're like always tired. That's like a sign. Okay, let's try and increase the boundaries a little bit. But there is a flip side to that too, right? if you have too many boundaries, we call that having rigid boundaries and the walls are too high. So like our little webcomic here, you get like hurt by having too porous, and then you put up like way too thick of walls. But that can be a problem too. A classic example is like the Berlin Wall in Germany, where the USSR was like too afraid of harm coming in from the West, and they erected this wall that ended up harming a lot of people because they didn't have access to like the resources that they needed to make a living. So eventually we find that like that middle ground, those call those healthy boundaries, where the walls are like just the right size. So like things can flow, people can, exchange ideas and goods. In the Monsters Inc. analogy, we have like a win-win agreement where laughter is like more beneficial than screams. So everybody is like benefiting. It's not, it's like the boundary is just the right level for both of these. And just speaking from personal experience, I think like I always had this expectation of like with boundaries that things would kind of get to this like breaking point, sort of like in a movie, and it's like you have a moment of crisis and then you turn your life around and everything gets fixed and it's like smooth sailing from there on out. But the experience that I've had is more of this like decaying sinusoid where you have times where your stress is like really low, you get maybe you're like bored, so you like go out, you try and like open yourself up more, and then you find out your boundaries are like too porous, or like you've overbooked your calendar, and it takes this like this process of feeling it out and like going back and forth till you really find the sweet spot. So that's kind of the overview of like the theory. It's the theory of boundaries. And in order to make this a little bit more relevant, practical for everybody, I would appreciate if maybe we could share some stories from things that we're dealing with at work. Like, are there instances or moments that you encountered in your job where you saw this invite and were like, something's going on where I feel like I need some more boundaries here.
I can share. Oftentimes my boss would have really interesting ideas and would want to call me at like between like 11 o'clock and 1 in the morning to chat about things. Especially in the beginning era of my employment. So that was my.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
No one leaves my office at 5 p.m. Everyone stays, and it's the worst.
Oh no. I'm sorry, Aaron.
I found myself in this like early on in my career trying to prove myself and taking on extra work that isn't necessarily in my job description. And then trying to set a boundary after the fact is really difficult when people have set expectations of me that I wasn't trying to set an expectation per se.
Right. Yeah, that can definitely be the case. Let's see. I wanted to write some of these down just so we have this. So we have boss calling at late hours, got staying after 5 p.m. We've got taking on more than we signed up for. Yeah, I think these are like pretty classic work problems, but they're solvable. If we can find the right ways of like communicating and then like sticking to those. So the thing keep in mind here is that boundaries can be mutually beneficial. Like, it might feel like maybe your career progress or some goodwill is being spent or lost. And that might be the case in the short term, but in the long term, it's generally better for your employer to like have you engaged and productive instead of being burnt out over the course of the year. And the way we do that is with communication and action. So if there's only communication, it comes off as being too passive. If there's only action, it comes off as being too aggressive, or passive aggressive as well. So there's a 4-step process here that you can learn to recognize and then get better with time. The first step is noticing the boundary violation, like the visceral reaction we talked about earlier, is that feeling of like, that wasn't right. Then we think about what we want to go differently. And that's the part that sort of happens internally. Then externally, we have to like be clear about what it is that we need. And once we do that, we're trying to stick to our commitments. And I know like this can feel I don't know, overly simplified, but it's like a tried and true formula that once you can get past some of the like typical hangups of maybe like guilt or yeah, once you can get past the hangups, you can really see results. So as an example, like someone is standing too close to you at a work function, like, you kind of know that feeling of like, okay, this is not fun anymore. How much space would you want? And then you can ask. It makes me uncomfortable when people stand too close to me. Can you take a step back? And the asking in the right tone is probably the trickiest part. We want to be assertive, but kind. And then stick to your commitments. Don't be afraid to repeat. And then there's also like being consistent. You know, like if you need personal space, like keep that same personal space with everybody. So then we're gonna go through some scenarios here, and then do like a group exercise. I think these touch on some of what we covered earlier. So people pleasing is a big one. Like every time someone asks you for help, you say yes. I was working in consulting for a little bit in my career, and this is like very common because you don't want to like upset the client, so you just say yes to everything. But sometimes you say yes and you know you can't do it. So you want to think about what are the projects you actually want to help out with, and you can narrow down that list. And the phrase or like the communication is again like assertive, but kind. I can't take on any new projects right now. Can someone else help you? Like one thing we're not doing here is we're not apologizing. Like your workload is full, and you don't need to apologize for that. Like you can't take on any new projects right now, and that assertiveness goes a long way towards helping like stick to your commitments. And then once you say that, like it also helps us to stick to that. If you have like people at your office who maybe you're on like better terms with, and like you do work for them but not for other people, it hurts the boundaries, because now they're like, that person gets confused and is gonna be like, is gonna try harder to get your time. At the same time, like there might be minor consequences from saying no to new projects. You know, maybe some people might get like more goodwill or like more attention because they're working on high priority projects. But something else you can also do is like shuffle your priorities. If something is really important where it needs to happen, it's like a simple matter of, I'm sorry, it's not always so simple. But in an ideal world, you can move things around to work on the things that are being asked for. Any questions on that before I move forward? Okay, sweet. So boundaries around time management. You keep signing on after work and you hate it with every fiber of your being. So that's a boundary that's being violated. Like your time matters to you. And then you have to like figure out for yourself, what is a reasonable time for me to sign off of work? And knowing what that number is, like knowing what that amount is, helps in being clear with your communication. So then you go to the people whose work is like requiring you to stay late, and you say, I need to sign off at 6 p.m. in order to feel rested for the next day. Can we adjust the schedule or my work schedule to reflect this? You know, this is going back to phrasing it in like in a win-win sort of terminology. Like you do want to get the work done, and if you're working too late, it's lowering the quality of your work, or like you can't be as productive. And being clear about your need for rest, because we all need to rest, we all need to get our energy back, can help people understand that like you're not just doing it to get out of work, you're doing it because you want to be better. But then also comes the commitment. Like once you tell this to someone, you do not want to open up your laptop after dinner, because if you tell them, or like if you communicate this need to sign off, but then someone sees you online in Slack, or they see the emails, it creates confusion around what your boundaries are. And it might feel a little weird at first when you like know you have something to do the next day and you could do it, but you're not going to. But that's just a temporary feeling. And once your team gets used to working with you in these boundaries, and you're consistent about signing off, then the follow through will come. So then the last example to go through here is always a fun one: client and customers. A lot of times you'll have clients with wildly different expectations for your project. Maybe a lot of times people who sell the work will like promise the moon, but then you only can build things on planet Earth. So you have this boundary where they keep asking for more, and that's impeding your ability to do things reasonably. But at least in the world of business, we have contracts that define what are the things we're going to do, what are the things can we skip. So here's where it's good to understand like what is actually in the contract, what are the things that need to do in order to get paid. And then you can make the clear ask that request is out of scope for our contract. Can I put you in touch with someone on our sales team to renegotiate? Now, I know earlier I said no apologizing. Here, I think when dealing with clients, I felt like necessary to throw that in because you do want to kind of maintain some goodwill there. But here, you're still showing that like kind and assertiveness. You're showing you're still interested in doing the work, but you need to get paid for the work. So once you can, you're implying that once all the details get sorted out, you can still do it for them. It's just a matter of the boundary right here, right now. And then once you've made that communication, you can ignore emails that are out of scope of your work. There's a chance that on your next call, they'll bring them back into the conversation. But you're presumably coming to those meetings with agendas or goals, and you can redirect the conversation to things that are important and not to the sort of the crazy whims of your customers. Okay. So, any questions? Okay. So I've saved some time here for a group exercise. Is there anyone who would want to volunteer for a role-playing exercise where we would take two people, one who is asserting a boundary, one who is trying to go around the boundary, to practice those sorts of noticing, asking, committing, sorts of discussions.
I can volunteer.
All right, thanks, Aurora. Is there anyone else who would want to volunteer? Okay. So then which side would you want to play, Aurora?
Can I be the person trying to push past the boundary?
Yes, I think that would be great. And we can, I guess I get to put my money where my mouth is now, don't I?
Sounds good. Hey, Steven, I was wondering if you could come into work at 3 in the morning tomorrow. Oh, did you?
Oh yeah, I don't know, there's just a signal.
Okay. Hey, Steven, I was wondering if you could come into work at 3 in the morning tomorrow.
I can't do that tomorrow, but I'll be in the office at 9.
Yeah, we just have this really important project that we've been working on for months, and I'm really concerned that it's going to fail if you don't come in by at least 3:30.
I'm very concerned that if I'm showing up to work at 3:30, it's going to impact the quality of my work, and it's going to mess the project up.
But the rest of the team is going to be here, and we're going to need your deliverables ready to go, bright and early, 3 a.m.
This is good. This is good. I understand that this project is important to you, and this project is important to me too, but I can't come in at 3:30 a.m.
What if I gave you $1,000 gift card to your favorite coffee shop? Would you be willing to come in then?
I'm sorry, but that is not a deal for me.
Sounds good. I guess I'll see you at 9 a.m. then.
I'll see you then.
Sounds good.
Nice, thank you. So yeah, boundaries can be challenging, and it does feel uncomfortable to assert them, because we think we all have this natural instinct to not necessarily to people please, but to be agreeable. I think if you have the big 5 personality traits, and agreeableness is one that comes up time and time again. And people who are more agreeable get promoted better. They end up with less stress in life. But agreeableness has a limit. And when it starts impacting your quality of life is when you have to like switch gears. Okay. So we are we're coming up towards the end of our talk here. We have some time here where if you have like a pen and paper handy, it would be good to think about like a challenge that you're facing at work. Times when you notice your boundaries getting violated, what you would want to be different, and then to come up with that communication plan. Because a lot of times the like the words that we choose have a lot of meaning. And then we can prepare for the next time that would come up, so that we can be ready for it. I actually have one that comes to mind, so I'm gonna write this down. Or we do this time. Does anyone want to share? What's in their plan?
Yeah, I'll share, Stephen. This is actually really nice to have intentional time to think about these things because I don't often do that. So one thing
Yeah.
is we have there's only two of us that work at my company. So as you can imagine, we spend a lot of time talking to each other. And something I've been struggling with recently is like the like overlap between our like personal lives and work life. So like a lot of times we'll like get a meeting and then it turns into like happy hour and then she's like, let's go to dinner, and I'm like, this is too much, like I like you but like not that much that I want to spend my whole day with you. So I think I'm gonna commit to telling her that like I really enjoy the time that we spend after work together, but it has to be limited on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions to make that ask stronger
Mm.
and
Are
not
there,
be like hurtful since it's like personal time I'm spending with her?
yeah. So I have one clarifying question, which is whether you have found like a consistent routine or rhythm to this, or is it really just like kind of all over the place?
It's like all over the place, but we meet in person 3 times a week, so it's consistently, it's usually like every day that we meet in person.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, I would. And is it every time that you go out after work when you're noticing that like I need to get out of here feeling, or is it
Like it's just
like
more
they
like the
got
time, like
three?
it's I find it hard to like because we're not talking about work the whole time, so I just find it sort of like being like it's overstepping my boundaries when like we're just like spending like hours after work and like she's asking me all these questions about my personal life, which I'm fine to like divulge, but I also want to keep like a boundary where it's like more professional.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Um, this is kind of a tricky one because you
Yeah.
have like there's like two layers to it. One one of them is the time. And then the other one is the topics.
Yeah.
And it might, you might want to like take those kind of stepwise. So it's maybe not as jarring.
Right, right.
And it sounds like the easiest one would be the time.
Yeah, and that's honestly the more concerning one.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
So then would you be happy with like 1 day a week or
Yeah.
okay.
So I could say like, Karen, I love the time we spend after work together, but I think I need to commit to once a week after our weekly, like our in-person meeting days. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think also like, it's good to emphasize that you need me time.
Yeah.
I think like it helps to like have hobbies or interests. You know, it's like having a fitness class. I think the people who I see who have the easiest time setting boundaries are like, I go to the gym every day at 6.
It's a great idea, actually.
Even if they don't go to the gym every day.
Right.
But that's you don't need that. It just kind of helps.
No, that's actually, I'm gonna have a standing class now at 5:30 p.m. every Tuesday.
Perfect.
Wednesday.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks.
Um,
Karen.
yeah. Thanks for sharing, Katie.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for hosting tonight.
So if there's nothing else, I think want to thank everyone for coming. I have some like extra slides if people want to hang around for like bonus content. But if you want to drop, please fill out a survey. We're trying to do more of these, and it would help us to like figure out what works, what doesn't. Thank you all for joining. So
Thanks, Steven.
yeah, no problem.
Bye. Thanks.
I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you, everyone.